How China can avoid a U.S. trade war in its favor, and what it is doing to gain the upper hand. Introduction. The economic rivalry between China and the United States has intensified over the past decade, leading to a complex and evolving trade war. This economic battle involves tariffs, trade restrictions, sanctions, and technological competition. While the U.S. aims to curb China's economic rise, China is employing various strategies to mitigate the impact of these tensions and, in some cases, turn the trade war to its advantage. Understanding the U.S. China trade war. The trade war between China and the U.S. formally began in 2018 when former U.S. President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, citing unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. China responded with its own tariffs, and the conflict escalated, affecting global supply chains and economic growth. The Biden administration has continued a firm stance against China, reinforcing restrictions on Chinese companies and increasing pressure on Beijing in areas such as technology and security. How China can avoid the trade war in favor of its interests. 1. Diversifying trade partnerships. One of China's key strategies to reduce dependence on the U.S. market is expanding trade relations with other regions. China has actively strengthened economic ties with the European Union, ASEAN countries, Africa, and Latin America. Initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, allow China to develop infrastructure projects globally, creating alternative trade routes and economic dependencies that lessen the impact of U.S. trade policies. 2. Enhancing domestic consumption and market reforms. China has been focusing on its dual circulation strategy, which aims to boost domestic consumption while maintaining its global trade presence. By developing a robust consumer market, China can reduce its reliance on exports to the U.S. and shift its economic growth model toward domestic-driven expansion. 3. Investing in technological self-sufficiency. One of the major battlegrounds in the U.S.-China trade war is technology. The U.S. has imposed restrictions on Chinese companies like Huawei, limiting their access to advanced semiconductor technologies. In response, China has ramped up investments in semiconductor manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and green technology. Companies like SMIC, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, are being heavily supported to reduce reliance on American chipmakers. 4. Strengthening currency and financial policies. The U.S. has weaponized the dollar's dominance by imposing financial sanctions on Chinese firms and officials. To counter this, China has been internationalizing the yuan through agreements with various countries, promoting the use of the digital yuan, and reducing dependency on the U.S. dollar in global trade. Additionally, China is expanding its influence in international financial institutions, including the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, to create alternative financial structures. 5. Strategic tariff reductions and economic diplomacy. China has tactfully adjusted its tariff policies to maintain competitiveness while reducing the burden on domestic industries. Additionally, China has engaged in diplomatic efforts to ease tensions through negotiations, seeking compromises on trade while leveraging global trade bodies like the World Trade Organization, WTO, to challenge U.S. tariffs and policies. What China is doing to gain the upper hand in the trade war. 1. Strengthening global supply chains and production resilience. China is actively working to secure its supply chains by developing alternative sourcing strategies. The Made in China 2025 initiative aims to transition China from a manufacturing hub to a leader in high-tech industries. Additionally, China has encouraged multinational companies to keep their production bases within the country by offering incentives and improving business conditions. 2. Deepening economic integration with Asia and Europe. China has been a driving force behind the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, the world's largest trade agreement, which includes 15 Asia-Pacific countries. This agreement enhances China's trade influence while reducing its dependence on the U.S. market. Similarly, China is engaging with the European Union to expand trade agreements despite some political tensions. 3. Advancing digital and technological domination. China is rapidly developing in fields such as artificial intelligence, 5G technology, quantum computing, and green energy. Companies like Tencent, Alibaba, and Baidu are heavily investing in AI and cloud computing. By leading in these areas, China aims to reduce reliance on American tech and set global technology standards in the future. 4. Leveraging economic coercion and soft power. China has increasingly used economic coercion as a tool to counteract Western pressures. It has imposed trade restrictions on countries that align too closely with the U.S., while offering economic incentives to nations that support its stance. Additionally, China is enhancing its global soft power through media expansion, educational programs, and cultural diplomacy. 5. Military and strategic deterrence. Although not directly related to trade, China's military advancements play a role in deterring U.S. economic aggression. The strengthening of the People's Liberation Army, PLA, and control over strategic regions such as the South China Sea provide China with geopolitical leverage that impacts trade routes and economic security. Conclusion. China is employing a multifaceted strategy to mitigate the effects of the U.S. trade war, and in some cases, turn the conflict to its advantage. Through economic diversification, technological self-sufficiency, currency policies, and strategic diplomacy, China is positioning itself as a resilient global power. While tensions between China and the U.S. are unlikely to disappear, Beijing's long-term strategies indicate that it is not merely reacting to the trade war, but actively reshaping global economic dynamics in its favor.